Hey everyone, how are you all? Um, Sorry I haven't sent any videos out recently. My arms and my back and my neck and even the inside of my ears have been bitten by mosquitoes. I've basically been a buffet for mosquitoes this week. It's been really hot in the UK for those of you in the US. Um, it's been very, very hot, and the mosquitoes have just basically bitten me to smithereens. You can probably see my eye is quite red. I also had a sty as well, and it blew up. That's why there's been no videos of me from me recently. I just want to check, make sure my sound's okay. Yeah, all green. That's fine. So, hi everyone. There's an update on the Skripal case. Well, I say update on the Skripal case, on the Novichok case, because another two people have been poisoned by Novichok and haven't died. um, this stuff is like the worst nerve agent in the world because five people so far have been infected with it, and yeah, nobody's died. So I've seen people suffer from sunstroke and have worse side effects than these people who suffered this Novichok poisoning. But anyway, it's a joke. Um, so before we get to what's happened recently, because there's another two people who have um, been poisoned supposedly with Novichok. Let's just do a highlight of you know where we are. It all starts back in 2009 when Hillary Clinton, as we found out from WikiLeaks, ordered diplomats to suppress Novichok discussions. Now, whether this is of any importance or not, I got to stress this. Whether that's of any importance or not, I don't know. But what I do know is she's involved in everything. It's just her name comes up all the time. It's either hers or her husband's. So anyway, this came up, and she wanted to suppress talk of Novichok when they um, gave safe haven to this Russian chemist that sort of invented it. Now, this story all goes back to January of 2017. And for those of you who have just got your information from the mainstream media, um, yeah, you probably forget everything you've been taught because it's just basically all wrong. The whole story goes back to 2017, and the reason why it goes back to 2017 is apparent because BuzzFeed published the PP dossier, and the PP dossier was authored by Christopher Steele. Now, as this article I'm showing you now proves, there was a D notice when it came out that Christopher Steele, who was a former MI6 agent, um, was the author of the PP dossier that was released in BuzzFeed. Um, the UK government immediately issued a D notice on journalists. Now, what is a D notice? Is also a DSMA notice. Basically, it's the government saying don't report any of this stuff because it's going to affect national security. As you can see here, 2004 and 2005, it's been used. It was used in 2013 to stop further stories of prison program, which had came to light because of Snowden's releases. And then in 2017, you can see there at the bottom, a notice was issued against British journalists revealing the identity of the British author, which was, of course, Christopher Steele. Now, there's a reason I bring that up, which becomes apparent. But just as an aside here, around this time, this is just around just before Trump gets inaugurated. Around this time, the P dossier is published in BuzzFeed, and the head of MI6 resigns shortly afterwards. Now, whether that's got anything to do with it, I don't know, but I'm just giving you the timeline of what we know so far. So, Christopher Steele is the former MI6 agent who is author of the PP dossier, and he was his company, Orbis Business Intelligence, I think it was employed to dig up any dirt they could on Trump. It was originally funded by a US Republican Party affiliate called the Washington Free Beacon, and when they stopped funding, Hillary Clinton's campaign continued the funding of it. Now, fast forward about 12 months, and this happens. Toxic storm for Royal Marines in major chemical exercise. This is the 6th of March, 2018. Royal Marines drawn gas masks for 3 weeks as they tested Britain's abilities to fight in the event of a chemical or worse, nuclear attack. Troops from 40 Commando based in Norton Manor near Taunton joined the country's leading experts in chemical, biological, radiological and nuclear warfare to make sure that they could cope in a worst case scenario. The Corps trained extensively for the threat of chemical warfare in both Gulf Wars. Thankfully, they were not used by Saddam Hussein's forces against British troops. Weapons of mass destruction. So this was the largest biological and chemical warfare drills that the UK had ever done. Why is that important? Well, because it was about 8 miles away, from this. Now, just look at the date here. Skripal's poison were on the 4th of March, and the trainings actually finished on the 4th of March. It was the day that, and this was just literally a few miles away. So, whether those two things are connected, again, we don't know. The Skripals get poisoned. We get told it's Novichok on the 4th of March. That is when they were poisoned. I think we get told it's Novichok the day after. Now, the first reports are they were suffering from the effects of some sort of psychoactive drug, which does run the same as we've just heard with this couple that have been allegedly poisoned with Novichok as well. They collapse. The Skripals collapse, and then out of the blue, a police detective shows up. He's the first one on the scene. You couldn't make it up. I know it's a real coincidence. The day after the poisoning, as everything is up in the air, and Sky News are reporting that 21 people were affected, the UK government once again slapped a D notice, this time on any mention of Orbis Business Intelligence, which, as we know, is Christopher Steele's company, and Pablo Miller. Now, Pablo Miller, as it turns out, was ex-MI6 as well. He was I believe, the recruiter of Sergei Skripal when Sergei Skripal was recruited as an agent for the British. So, this is it all gets curious, like I say. Just gets curious when curiouser this does. So this is taken from the excellent Moon of Alabama, and they correctly put out that Pablo Miller, who at the time was posing as Antonio Alvarez de Hidalgo and working in Britain's embassy. This is back in when Skripal was recruited to the MI6 as an agent. So they knew each other by the look of it all the way back to the 90s. Now, the D notice came out on Pablo Miller and Orbis Business Intelligence we know this through Alex Thompson, who gave us this quote about the only decisive public move by the authorities has been to censor mainstream media via a D notice last week from fully identifying Mr. Skripal's MI6 handler living nearby. That was Pablo Miller. So consistently, the UK government have slapped D notices on the media time and time again. This is Pablo Miller. That's his picture, and he just happened to be, as I say, the recruiter for Sergei Skripal and he knew Steele at the time. So the Skripals got poisoned, allegedly, and we start getting the first reports through the government and the media that this is Novichok, this least lethal nerve agent ever invented by the look of it. Reports were running wild in the media that Yulia had brought the poison over via cereal, and then there were several theories as to how they were poisoned. And to be honest, I don't think we ever got to the bottom of that. The last thing we heard was it was smeared on the door handle, although I have heard today that could have been by syringe. I've heard that through George Galloway. There was all sorts of theories being tested, but one thing for certain, we don't know for sure how they were poisoned. And the same with this couple that have just been poisoned as well. We don't know for sure how they were poisoned. Um, Obviously, the mainstream media come out in lockstep with the politicians, and they all say that, hey, it's all of a type developed by Russia. They're very careful in what they're saying. Um, and this stokes up any anti-Russia tension and hysteria in the media. About 2 weeks prior to Syria, Russia's closest ally, being bombed again based on no physical or factual evidence whatsoever. Same as with the Skripals. No factual evidence whatsoever that it was Russia. No factual evidence whatsoever that Syria did a gas attack. Actually, even that a gas attack took place and the rush to judgment and blame Russia obviously um, went haywire. Anybody who called for a more measured approach, like Jeremy Corbyn, was immediately smeared as a communist in the press. So the anti-Russia hysteria was built up again, and through all this, Russia have been accused of using chemical weapons on European soil for the first time since World War One. The UK government have obviously ramped up tensions. Boris Johnson likened the World Cup being held in Russia to being held in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, the Olympics I'm talking about. Gavin Williamson was a twat as well, but what do you expect? Gavin Williamson was a twat, telling the UK, the Russians to shut up and go home or something like that. It was just ridiculous. And all through this, the Russian diplomats have, in my mind, held themselves with integrity. They haven't lost it. They haven't called anybody names. They haven't been doing what Boris Johnson and Gavin Williamson do. They've been measured and assured in everything that they've said, and everything that they've said seems to be what we're asking as well. So there was a rush to judgment in both cases, both the Skripal case and the Syria case. This is a picture of the original poisoning, which means the official story we've got for that poisoning is they were supposedly poisoned with a military grade 4th generation Novichok of a type developed by Russia. Apparently, this is 8 or 10 times more lethal than VX gas. Should have killed them both within minutes. However, because it was obviously taken out by the most useless hitman in the history of the planet, they managed to drive to the supermarket, walk to the pub for a drink, went and had a meal in the restaurant, and then finally collapsed on a park. And obviously, by way of luck, first to the scene was, of course, a police detective. All three people, the policeman, Yulia Skripal, and Sergei Skripal, have all disappeared from public view. Yulia made a statement, which was highly rehearsed. You could see a scar, looked like a tracheectomy scar. And that's the last we heard of it until most recently. And that brings me to what's happening in the last few days. I believe on Saturday these poisonings happened. But before we get to that, and before we get to the main story, I would just want to put this clear in your mind. This is the map. Look at that. Just look at that. There's the poisonings. There's Ainsbury. There's Salisbury, and look what's basically smack down in the middle, smack bang in the middle. Now, when I'm obviously going to cover this recent the recent happenings with this story, I want everybody to understand three things and go into it with three things in their mind. So far, any blame of any hacking in the Russian connection has been without merit, shown without evidence. Any blame for any Russian involvement in these Novichok poisonings has been assigned to Russia, has been assigned without any evidence. And also any blame for the Russian involvement or Syrian involvement in the gas attack in eastern Ghouta that led to the three countries bombing Syria. Again, no evidence for any of those three things entirely, which leaves me to think, why aren't the media asking the most obvious question? Just look at that picture. Just look at the picture. There it is. And Porton Down is literally a few miles away from both. I'm sorry, you don't need to be a genius to start thinking where to ask questions. Why aren't the media asking these questions? Porton Down is like 3 miles, 4 miles away. If anybody spent any time on forums, especially army forums, and I have when I was researching this script archive, the stories from the army personnel coming out of Porton Down are, some of them are hilarious, but others are downright scary. Downright scary. A recurring theme I kept coming up on these forums from these army personnel was the practical jokes that go on at Porton Down are numerous. They'll have army people going on a run, and they'll run past a building, and then all of a sudden a guy will come out of the building in a full hazmat suit, dragging some box or something like that, with the guys running past on their jog, and the guy will say, "I got the short straw today," pulling out this box with waste oozing over the side. Loads of stuff goes on there. So why aren't the media jumping all over this? It's the most obvious place to start. The obvious place to start is not Russia. That makes no sense. I've said all along it makes no sense for Russia to do it anyway. We're getting ahead of ourselves. So now we have another 2 people allegedly poisoned by this Novichok, again a few miles away from Porton Down. Again, where those largest biological weapons and chemical weapons training routines were carried out. And I was thinking about Occam's razor a lot. I mention it a lot on my channel, and Occam's razor suggests here, well, that's where you should look, Porton Down. That would just, why isn't anybody, see, I use that thinking in my critical thinking all the time. So shouldn't the question that the media media be asking is, guys, do you think these problems might all be because of, the largest chemical and biological weapons factory in the UK that's just a few miles away? But no, that's not what the government did. This is their response to the latest attack, and I will get to the reports of the latest attack in a minute. But I just wanted to play you this. This is Sajid Javid's response to this latest alleged poisoning.
It is now time that the Russian state comes forward and explains exactly what has gone on. Let me be clear. We do not have a quarrel with the Russian people. Rather, it is the actions of the Russian government that continue to undermine our security and that of the international community.
Wait. Okay. Did you let me just play that again. Just let me just get that first part again.
It is now time that the Russian state comes forward and explains exactly what has gone on.
So that's how it starts. I've got to say this. All right. It's not Russia. It's not the Russia or the Russian state that needs to explain what the hell has gone on here. It's the frigging UK government and the UK state. This has not happened in Moscow. This has happened on your doorstep and on the doorstep of the largest chemical and biological weapons factory in the UK. If anybody has any questions that they have got to answer, It's the frigging UK government that. Honestly, the world's gone mad. Let me get back to this. I'll play this again because this is important. The response to this is just hilarious.
It is now time that the Russian state comes forward and explains exactly what has gone on. Let me be clear. We do not have a quarrel with the Russian people. Rather, it is the actions of the Russian government that continue to undermine our security and that of the international community.
Again, he said there that it's the Russian government are to blame. They have provided no evidence whatsoever. None at all. None. And it's just gone straight. Russia, the bad guy, governor. Let's carry on.
We will stand up to the actions that threaten our security and the security of our partners. It is completely unacceptable for our people to be either deliberate or accidental targets, or for our streets, our parks, our towns to be dumping grounds for poison.
Just listen to that. Dumping grounds for poison. When I heard that, I thought, are you kidding me? You've provided no proof whatsoever. None. And now we've got 2 more people poisoned and nobody has a clue how. Let's carry on with it. Last bit.
We will continue with our investigations as a matter of urgency, and I will keep the House and the public updated on any significant
developments. That's what he said at the end there. Going to keep everybody updated on any significant developments. Unbelievable. So this is the latest, I believe. Let's have a look what's going on. In fact, actually, let's have a chat with everybody. See if we've got any questions before we go on to the latest bit of the story. Because it's curious, this is. How these 2 people have been poisoned is beyond me. Buy a nice cherry pie. I will, chicken. Thanks for the contribution, my friend. Is football coming home? I'll tell you this, they should get to the final. In my lifetime, there's never been a better chance. There's never been a better chance. Ferrero Lobos. Exactly. It's Occam's razor principle again, which is the most obvious explanation. Exactly. Exactly. You could just, all right, let's bring this picture up again. Let's just bring this picture. All right. Okay. Imagine that's not Porton Down, right? Imagine that is the Moscow Government Research Laboratory, right? And now imagine that there are 2 instances of poisoning within 8 miles of that within a few months. Imagine that this happened in Moscow, or imagine it happened in Washington or Iraq or Iran or France or whatever. Whatever facility was between those 2 cases, that's where you would assign the blame. It's Occam's razor, like I said. Greetings from Oregon, Uncle Trino. Hi, Oregon. Is there a nutcase employee in Porton Down? Rod Jones asks. There's probably quite a few. I've seen some horrific stories. I really have. How many of them are true? I don't know. But I've seen some horrific stories of stuff that goes on at Porton Down. Go on. There's a lot of military forums out there. It's free, easy to read. You don't have to register. But some of the stories, just read them. It's hilarious. It really is. I'm not holding my breath on these updates, says Uncle Terena. Yeah, no, neither am I. And whatever updates you get, you can guarantee that they're going to be propaganda, basically, without a shadow of doubt. Right, okay. Let's get on to the latest. So this is the latest. Okay, so John Baker House is where victim Dawn Sturgis lives, and John Baker House is some sort of home for the is it for the homeless? You would say, yeah, for the homeless. Now, from what I can tell from these two people who have been poisoned, one's homeless and the other one is a junkie. But that's what the press will have us believe. For instance, they called the guy, what's his name? Charlie Rowley. He's 45. They called him a junkie, and they've been trying to label him as some sort of recovering heroin addict or something like that. But he's just got a mortgage, I believe, very recently. And the mortgage he would need is, it's hundreds of thousands of pounds. The guy who he got the mortgage from, he's friends with on Facebook, it doesn't seem to me like a bit of a junkie. And then this woman, who they are basically saying is homeless, them trying to make out that she's some sort of vagabond, from what I've seen in the press. But apparently she's some sort of teaching assistant, and she's not, she's not what the press seem to be making her out to be to me. Which does ask the question: why are the British press going down this route? Why are they trying to make out that these are just really unimportant people? It's like, oh no, they're not spies or anything like that. It's really weird. Really, really weird. So again, the protective clothing happened. Now, a question I would like asked is this: apparently this happened on Saturday, but it didn't hit the press until the Monday. So was there another D notice? We've had a D notice when the Steele dossier was published. We had a D notice when the Novichok poisoning happened against Pablo Miller and Orbis Business Intelligence. Was there a D notice the weekend? If anybody's seen anything on Twitter or anything from any journalists, let me know. I haven't found any yet, any proof that there was, but wouldn't surprise me if there was. So let's get back to this article. I think this is the article I wanted anyway. Now, it says here, Novichok can be degraded by rainwater and sunlight over time. See that in the BBC? That goes directly contrary to what their expert on Panorama, I think it was, said. Their expert said that it doesn't degrade over time and it doesn't degrade with rainwater. You can there are just inconsistencies in their story, and that's the BBC as well. There's inconsistencies all over the place. It has changed multiple times, this story has. The government scientist said the Novichok was so toxic it was able to pass through the skin and did not need to be ingested. So toxic. If it's so toxic, why is nobody dead? Back to my original point. This is the worst nerve agent ever invented, if this is the case. Really is. Whoever was the assassins or would-be assassins, they were useless. They were poisoned with Novichok near Charles-Salisbury in March. That's talking about the Skripals. Conservative MP Tom Tugendhat said the latest incident was a result of a war crime by Russia, and that using a nerve agent in a civilian area was a vile act of terror. Again, where's the proof? Where's the proof? And why is nobody asking questions and putting down? Why not? But Russia, which denies involvement in either incident, said the UK was trying to muddy the waters and intimidate its own citizens. Then we got CCTV of this Miss Sturgis. She's understood to be a mother of three who lives at Salisbury Hospital, which offers supported accommodation. A close friend of Miss Sturgis, who also lives at Job Baker House, described her as loving and caring person. Just as an aside, just once, I would like somebody to have had something happen to them, and for them to go to a neighbour or friend, and their neighbour and friend to just say, no, I really didn't like them. Why is it whenever they talk to any of their friends, They always say, yes, he's a decent. They're always a decent, loving person. Not everybody is. Not everybody is. Just once I would like one of these news outlets to go to somebody and say, okay, what did you think of your next door neighbour? And them say, oh no, the bastards, I didn't like them at all. I really would like that once to happen. That's just an aside. Anyway. So this is what the BBC say happened to them. On Saturday, paramedics were called twice to a flat in Muggleton Road in Amesbury, first at 11 a.m. after Miss Sturgis collapsed. Medics again attended several hours later after Mr. Rowley fell ill. So when were they poisoned? When were they poisoned? Were they poisoned both at the same time, or were they poisoned at different times? If she went to the hospital at 11 o'clock, why didn't they take him as well? Why didn't he go with his girlfriend? These are all questions that immediately come to my mind. Nothing's adding up here. Why didn't he get? This is a couple, isn't it? Why didn't he go with her? A friend of the couple, Sam Hobson, said after Miss Sturgis was taken to hospital, he and Mr. Rowley went to a chemist in Amesbury to collect a prescription before going to an event at a nearby Baptist church. The two men returned to the flat and planned to visit the hospital, but Mr. Rowley started feeling unwell, really hot and sweating, began acting all funny, and this is consistent with what they said with the original poisoning of the Skripals, that they were basically out of it, and they weren't high, they were acting very strange. So the guy said, they say he was rocking against the wall. What are the police investigating? They then go on to say at BBC, poisoning with Novichok probably, and then we come to what the government has said. I showed you Javid's response that they talk about here. What exactly? The UK needs to explain what's gone on here. Russia embassy have responded. UK reaction to Amesbury incident puzzling. Russia proposed a joint investigation into Salisbury from the very beginning. Proposal remains valid. Instead of cooperating, London prefers to muddy the waters, confuse and intimidate its own citizens. It just seems to me like this is a bit of a disinformation campaign that's going on. Everything to point away from Porton Down, everything to point away from MI6 and MI6 agents and former MI6 agents, just everything to deflect anywhere else rather than on their own doorstep. I just want to add this little bit in as well at the end, because this is important. In response to Mr. Javid's comments, Russia said the British government was subjecting them to hell. And I believe that's true as well. I believe we are being extremely unfair. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova urged police not to be led by the dirty political game and said she was confident the UK would have to apologise to Russia. Russian newspapers have also been following developments. Return of the wandering Novichok, said the headline in one outlet. And another one said the poisoning could have been the consequence of Porton Down staff losing vigilance. And that is why I wanted to highlight this article right at the very end. Says the poisoning could have been a consequence of the Porton Down staff losing vigilance. What has gone on here, I have no idea. I have no idea what the truth is. What I do know is what we have heard from the media is blatantly all false, and it has to be. They can't report on this correctly because of the D notices. They could ignore the D notices, by the way. Those D notices can be ignored. It's not written in law that the press have to follow them. Indeed, they didn't follow the D notice that the government gave them on Christopher Steele when the dossier was published in BuzzFeed. They didn't do that, mainly because his name was all over the internet by that stage, and in outlets like CNN and MSNBC and Fox. So the BBC and I think it was the Telegraph ignored it. Other newspapers that went along with that D notice then. So I just wanted to end just on this. because this is Moon of Alabama. Now, I have no idea. I had no idea of this website before the Skripal case, actually. And they were brilliant on the Skripal case. And to be honest, this website is just brilliant on everything. They are excellent. And they started off here. It seems that Theresa May felt a need to stoke some more Russian hate. And that's the only. I'll leave a link to that article after I finish the screen below this, so everybody can go and read it. They basically go through all my points that I've outlined here and more. Who are this couple? How were they poisoned? How were they poisoned? If they were poisoned by something that was left over from the Skripal poisoning, how is that possible when every area was meant to have been gone through decontamination, and it lasted for weeks? That did as well. So if they have been poisoned by something in a bin or something like that, then obviously the UK government and the UK authorities haven't done its bloody job again. And all this is happening. All of this is happening just as the anti-Russian sentiment has all died down because of what has turned out to be an excellent World Cup, and the fans over in Russia are absolutely loving their time over there and finding that the Russian people are wonderful people that they've got lots and lots in common with. It just seemed to me like this is the timing is curious, shall we say. It's also coming at the time of reports from in Syria and Russia. They are saying that they're getting reports that there's going to be another attack. Make of that what you will. And obviously, tensions are rising high right now with Iran and the American government. And then we've got potential Putin-Trump meeting on the horizon as well. So it's going to be curious to swear as to what happens. But I will be say this for sure. I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of this. I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of it and the bottom of what happened. But I also think that if we need to look anywhere, it's that place less than, was it 8 miles away from both of these instances taking place. I also think it's interesting that the media immediately go to try and discredit these people when they don't seem to be as their lives don't seem to be in such disarray as the British media try to make out. It's really interesting. Just make sure that I have covered everything. Okay. Let's go to Moon of Alabama. This is the update of it. A friend of the couple who had been with them on Friday night and Saturday was interviewed by several outlets. Now, we covered that in the BBC, on the BBC article, so I'm going to script that down to here. Witnesses say that the people in protective suits were seen on Saturday evening. Again, so there were, but she was poisoned about 11 o'clock. She was unwell, the lady was. And then protective suits were seen in the evening. And you can see here there's plenty of people who are on record as saying there was movement around that area all of that weekend. The police early on lied to the people living in the place where the incidents happened. It first pretended that the issue was a gas leak. 2 days ago, it still told local media that this was a case of contaminated drugs, but its actions showed that something else was going on. So they have lied to us. You would expect that, though. You don't want hysteria to happen. A gas leak would be... I know they've lied there, but I sort of understand it. So there it says, it is inexplicable that the public was not immediately informed of a new occurrence of a nerve agent in the Wiltshire area. Now, I don't agree with that. You don't want hysteria to happen, but you do want the truth to come out eventually. If, as we are made to believe, the 2 persons picked up Novichok somewhere in the park, a warning to the public should have been the very next step. Now, I'm pretty sure the park that the Skripals were poisoned in would have been decontaminated, so it looks like it's not that. There was obviously a high risk that others might make contact with the same substance. There's no public warning given that lets me assume that the truth is somewhat different than the censored official story. You're not wrong there. The truth is very different to what we've been told. Since the Skripals mysteriously recovered from a nerve agent 10 times stronger than VX, a nerve agent that's useless because so far it's poisoned 5 people and none of them have died. And the police released a hostage video of Julia Skripal. They vanished from the scene, a hostage video. Likewise, nothing was since heard of the policeman who also fell ill at that time and recovered a few days later. And that, I think, is what's going to happen here with these 2 people who have been mysteriously poisoned. I think that they will come out of hospital. They're obviously going to be fine. I hope they obviously make a recovery. They will make a statement, maybe another hostage video, and then they will disappear too. It's going to be really curious as to what happens next. I thought that this was ended. I thought the whole story had ended, but for it to all come about again, it's just really strange to me. Anyway, I suggest look at Portland Down first. All right, hi everybody. Let's just try and jump into the chat and just say hi to everyone because I've been away for a few days. I don't know whether people. I think I'm allergic to mosquito bites. I don't know whether anybody else is who's watching. Rumours that Skripal is an associate of Christopher Seal suggest this is Nancy Barry. Rumours that Skripal, an associate of Christopher Seal, he wasn't just an associate, he was actually recruited by Pablo Miller, and Pablo Miller and Christopher Steele apparently knew each other back then, suggested that MI6 colluded with FBI to produce fake dossier to justify spying on Trump campaign. That's, again, another thing that it's definitely all connected. That's for sure. It's definitely all connected. Now, could this be Russia? Of course it could. Of course it could. Could be some sort of revenge. You don't know. Of course it could. But is it likely to be? No. Portland Down's too close, man. The Mycroft. Anyone there get the feeling that we UK are the bad guys? Yes. And it does worry me, not just the UK. I think we're on the wrong side. It's almost like the US are as well. I've been doing a lot of research on South America recently, and what they have been doing for decades in South America is horrible. It's horrible. Little Green Man, Gordon. If England wins the World Cup, does that mean collusion? Possibly. The newspapers will go down that route. They will possibly say it was collusion. And this has just jumped on me all the way down to the bottom again. Ruben Garcia, good for the UK to leave Russia hysteria behind, but here in the US, our media will not drop Russiagate no matter how often it gets debunked. They can't drop Russiagate because that's the whole narrative that the DNC has spun. That's their excuse for losing to Donald Trump. Their excuse to blame an external entity in Russia enabled them to A, have an excuse for losing, and also B, not move left, which is what they need to do to actually win back the voters that they have thrown overboard over the last 3 decades. So they're never going to drop this Russia nonsense. They don't have to. You just have to keep saying things enough. When the FBI case ends, we know what's going to happen. People will get prosecuted for financial irregularities, as has already happened. But with regards to Donald Trump being impeached over it, I don't think so. He didn't do anything. And if you go after him on financial stuff, you got to go after Hillary Clinton on her financials. Man, the Clinton Foundation is way more crooked. It's certainly up there with Trump. And then, they're not going to get Trump on financial irregularities. Yes, he's a con man. Yes, he's a liar. But if you really wanted to impeach him, they could have done it already over Israel and Saudi Arabia. But they don't want to impeach him. They just want to blame Russia because then it lets them off the hook for losing to Trump means they don't have to change, means they can keep taking their corporate and PAC money, keep getting bribed, and keep losing elections. That may change after Ocasio-Cortez there. Matejliak, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, mate. Have you seen that the OPCW did not find any nerve agents in Duma? I haven't seen that, actually. I've been waiting for their report to come out. But the fact it wasn't made, if it has come out and it wasn't made huge news, should tell you a lot. That should be huge news if it hasn't found any nerve agents in Duma. But then they already have the excuse and the narrative waiting for them. They just said, oh well, they delayed the OPCW guys while they cleaned it all up. That's their excuse. The OPCW guys turned up there without the right forms. It's almost as if they turned up there actively trying to get delayed. Covert White Rabbit, hi mate. Rob Van, experimental testing program. That's one of the things that I read a lot on these army forums about Porton Down. There's a lot of real. I mean, I can't obviously verify if any of them are true or not because it's just on an open forum. But these are obvious, military guys, and some of the stories they tell about Porton Down are. Some of them are hilarious, but some of them are horrifying as well. There's definitely things going on there that we're not privy to. Zombie in the air, blame Russia, and they don't have to change. That's exactly what I just said, mate. You blame Russia, and they don't have to change. That's the DNC. The Mycroft, every leader in South America is a dictator. Every leader that's not aligned with the UK or the US is a dictator. Saudi Arabia aren't a dictator, though. They're not a dictatorship. It's not the Saudi Arabian regime. They'll never call it the Saudi Arabian regime in the media. The BBC will never say, oh, the Saudi Arabian regime. They will say Syrian regime and say Syrian state media are saying this. But they never say it with Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia it's far more of a dictatorship than Syria is. If you look at, for instance, look at the laws in Syria. In Saudi Arabia. They've only just allowed women to pass the test to drive. And then they arrested the women who protested and got them the right to drive. Women in Syria are free to wear whatever clothes they want. They can drive, they can vote. Assad's number 2 is a woman. The first ever female judge in the Middle East was in Syria. They have great rights compared to Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's whenever this sort of things happen, you always have to remember the thread of a good example. Saudi Arabia will not like the fact that Syria give women much more freedom than Saudi Arabia do. They're neighbors, because Saudi Arabia, they will think Saudi Arabian women finding out about that will say, oh, hold on a minute, how come they can vote? How come they can wear what they want? It's the same as, so obviously Saudi Arabia won't want their people finding out that Syrian women have these freedoms that they don't have. And it's the same with American media with Venezuela. Venezuela, their voting system is unriggable. It's unhackable, which is why it's so funny that America say, oh, it's a rigged election. The American media say it's a rigged election because if you were to actually look at the process, it's nigh on impossible to do. But you can't let the people of America find out about that because the people of America will go, oh, can we have that system as well? Thread of a good example. You can't let that information get into the masses. Digital tyranny. Trump could be impeached for breaking the emolument clause right now. He could be impeached for breaking the emolument clause literally the day he was voted in. He was doing it on the campaign, setting up was it 8 different companies in Saudi Arabia and all the dealings with Kushner and Israel. If you really wanted to get him, they could get him on that, but they're not. Like I say, this Russia stuff is just an excuse to blame somebody else so they don't have to move left, so the Democrats don't have to move left, and also stoke anti-Russian tension to give everybody a bad guy, so the military-industrial complex can still make their millions, and the American economy can last another few years. It's on its last legs, though. It can't continue. I don't think so. And Amanda Rake, I always thought they came up with this Russiagate nonsense just to keep people occupied and divided, while both the Repulsive Party and the Despicable Party, I like your names, betray the American people. That's a good way of looking at it. That's a good way of looking at it. I can't see anything wrong with that. The Repulsive and the Despicable Party, as you call them, they're both right wing. And they're both only there to take their money from their corporate masters and do their bidding. So it will be good to see a revolution happen in America and the UK very soon. Let's hope so. Ferrero Lobos, Bashar al-Assad was a reformist. He studied in England. Exactly right. Not many people know this. He studied as a doctor, I believe, in England. If he had remained a dictator like his father, the social unrest that led to the war and foreign intervention wouldn't have happened. I do agree with that as well. I do agree with that. If he had been a strong-arm dictator the way his father was, that unrest in 2011 it was 2011 that really caused it. That's where the root of it was, and that ended up with 2015 with that guy was sitting in there. He was meant to come in and be the leader after the other guy was ousted in 2011. And the two things, one of the main things he was meant to do was hold an election. He held an election and nobody else ran. And then, so he won that election, and he got a 2-year extension. And then he just carried on being the leader of the country. Oh, no, that's Yemen. Sorry, I'm talking about Yemen. I'm not talking about, I got my countries mixed up then. So, but it all happened around the same time with this Arab Spring. That was 2011. And I think if Assad had been a strong-line dictator, as you rightly say, at that time, then maybe, this war wouldn't have happened in 2015. Right. And we done? So hopefully, well, I'll keep you all updated as to what happens with this Skripal affair and this Novichok stuff. I've got a feeling that it'll all die down now, but I did say that last time. So when I did the last video, so as to what happens with regards to these two people and what has happened, you might as well just guess. You might as well just guess. But if I had to guess, if you had to twist my arm, I'd say if you want to start looking, here would be a good start. It just makes no sense that nobody's looking there when there's 2 poisonings happening within 5 or 10 miles. 5 people now poisoned with the most 4th generation, one of the most deadly nerve agents known to man, and nobody died. None of this is adding up. Just not adding up. Pull the other one, BBC and the British media. Scott Belsey. Thanks again, guys. Now I'm recovering from less bitten and my eyes not puffed up. It almost closed on Tuesday. It was horrible. I'll get back to doing videos, and hopefully there will be plenty more this weekend, and there'll be a live stream on Sunday as usual. Till then, peace. Take care.